Chapter 19. When Titans Feud. Oma quakes and churns like the belly of a poisoned beast. Some of her very cells, in the shapes of Omani and Tamas, have been mutated and recast into warring parasites, fervently vying for her domination. One ripping into her surface with the aid of the same that she has bestowed upon us, the other pulverizing her, hammering craters with the assistance of his genetic might. Both superpowers collide with a contentious fury. An extravaganza of dazzling and intense flashes and brute strength ensues as the two rivals close the scope between one another and engage in close-quarter combat once more. Hands to hand, blade to lightning, brawn to agility. Yindra moves exquisitely and is precise with each strike, whilst EVR displays his complete mastery of the multitude of the Tamas martial arts, switching between styles even in the midst and duration of his strung-together combinations. Each counter is followed by another, but EVR has yet to land any decisive blows, whereas Yindra has connected with half of his throws, though the damage is light. EVR's skin is as dense, if not denser, than a vast nut, and his shoulder blades, chest, and abdomen are covered by the scorched, yet still useful, shells of their formers, for what additional protection they provide. Where his chainmail had failed, the vast plates could not. Furthermore, he uses his well-tempered and masterfully forged greatsword to deflect what bolts he may, and his proficiency in equipping and sheathing it between kicks and punches is stupefying. As the conflict wages on, EVR's speed approximates that of Yindra's, inexorably pushing the disadvantaged captain towards an inevitable predicament. Yindra, as astute as ever, keenly perceives his steadily declining odds against his frightful opponent.
Command! Magnetta's spear!
He shouts his command, armored in the style of a war cry, echoed by the rumbling thunder itself. Murky, hanging clouds linger above the battlefield, converging into a blanketing layer. Its bottom, incapable of withholding its grief, bursts into a downpour. Yindra throws his right hand to the sky and calls forth a pinkish bolt of lightning from out of the fed furnace of the raging tempest. The bolt forms into an erratic spear, with wild branches of electricity flaring from its shaft and both of its tips, the helm being more so pronounced with a vivid exhilaration.
There's your signature weapon.
EVR smirks and continues.
That blasted thing is never easy to deal with.
He speaks through his teeth, baring them as a chain of grinning knives, gleaming behind the bush of his beard. In this moment, Saba looks to me for an explanation. Magnetta's spear marks its target once it has come in contact with it. The spear itself has a malleable texture that can be broken apart or reformed, particle by particle. Marked targets are then struck by lightning from arbitrary, undisclosed locations within the storm clouds above, whensoever the wielder of the spear speaks the word Thum. This is one of Yindra's most circumferential abilities. Saba simply nods. It appears as though even an attack of this magnitude and guile cannot secure victory in his eyes. EVR studies the gloom above him, then jams his claymore into the ground and kneels to unstrap the bottom plates of Vasnuts from his abdomen. He removes the right bottom piece and then the one directly adjacent. Clenching both plates, one in each voracious hand, he stands and lifts his sword from the dirt with his right foot alone, pressing upwards from under one end of the hilt. He launches it up, and as it succumbs to the undeniable gravity, the heavy handle starts to veer down first. But before it can turn vertical again, he spins and kicks the hilt at an angle and trajectory that aligns perfectly with where Yindra stands. The greatsword flies with a piercing velocity. Immediately following, he begins his barbaric stride towards Yindra himself. The blade glides swiftly, stabbing through the space between them with no resistance. The captain does not hesitate to respond.
Command! Static retreat!
By translating his to pure static energy, he is able to vibrate at a frequency too brisk for any kinetic damage to be fully inflicted. This also makes him impossible to grapple and hold on to. Yindra sidesteps the giant greatsword and locks his unfaltering stare upon his trailing opponent, each pupil holding within it a violent storm. Eviar closes the gap, baiting first with a right hook with the plate still in hand. Instead, however, he continues the momentum and spins into a back fist with his left. Yindra catches on, but nearly too late. He dashes a great distance backwards in an attempt to re-evaluate his adversary's thinking. Eviar, relentless in his onslaught, stampedes in place, causing the greater aura around him and Yindra to crumble and break apart. The Alpha hurls the pink halberd back into the clouds so as not to lose it as he struggles with his balance. In the slightest of moments, the captain misplaces his footing entirely, and Eviar capitalizes on this fortuitous instant. With tremendous vigor he pitches one of the vast slabs, striking Yindra in the rib and shooting him into the sterile landscape. The pressure of the plate was successfully mitigated, though not in whole, by his static retreat. This is the first significant strike landed by Eviar. The captain lets out a painful gasp and gulps to reclaim the air he had lost. He coughs out blood whilst hoisting himself back up. Lifting his hand to the sky once again, he summons his spear from overhead.
Command! Flash freeze!
Yindra emits a mighty flash from the founts of his pupils so acute that it right away thwarts Eviar's vision. For a fleeting moment, even my sight fails me, though Yindra does not gaze this way. Eviar assumes a defensive stance, but then drops his guard shortly thereafter. What has he realized? Why would he open himself up like this? Is he insane? And why does Yindra not exploit his error?
When did you get me?
Eviar celebrates his rival. But what for?
I was fortunate enough to grant myself that window. A single sliver. If I wanted to ensure I'd hit you within the lapse of that flash, I could only blast a single minute piece of the spear at you from this distance. Yet I did. When I sent my halberd back into the furnace of the sky, I kept a fragment of it down here with me.
He points at Eviar.
You're so hard-headed and thick-skulled that you did not even feel its impact.
He is right. Eviar has a scorched circle upon his forehead, glowing in the hue of Yindra's halberd. I am grateful that I've reached a level of awareness in so that I can moderately follow their unnaturally rapid motions. But that last play was out of my league entirely. And it isn't so much that the speed outpaces my vision. No, I've since adjusted to their clash as I watched. It is their style of combat with one another that betrays my senses.
You've expanded your skills since we last met, though I can hardly say that I am in shock.
He sports a malicious grin.
Thum!
Yindra utters and recites the soliloquy of the Tempest, persuading it to do his bidding. He does not allow for their conversation to lead him astray. Cackling amongst the skies, a coral bolt clashes down, hungering for its prey, thirsting for his blood. Eviar responds by pitching the remaining plate he wields with a precision meeting the mortal-seeking skyfire.
Thum!
Again, the dismayed Nimbus quakes and strikes. Eviar spins from the impact, scarcely avoiding it, then sprints to his greatsword.
Thum!
Rolling over it, he re-equips his weapon and, from the ground against his back, parries the bolt into a valley multiple kalama away. These two have the capacity to outrightly bring entire kingdoms to their knees. I cannot imagine a battle like this even being possible.
Thum!
Fresh bolts are sent to greet Eviar. Time after time, he dodges, or when applicable, he parries. A single pink bolt has yet to make contact. The intensity of Yindra's previous lightning strikes pale in comparison to that of these rose-tinged bolts. This has become a battle of endurance. Which will happen first? Will Eviar tire physically, or will Yindra's reserves deplete? The tension is paralyzing, yet Rielandor is inert to it all. It is as though he knows the outcome and has been familiar with it from the beginning. Saba, surprisingly, shows no anxiousness. His demeanor does not reflect what it was earlier in the slightest. He actually appears to be in a trance. His eyes are fixated on the battle, but his mind is elsewhere entirely. What could possibly hold his attention hostage when there are two titans raining calamity against one another right in front of us?
Thum!
The captain adds a vivid ferocity to this following call for thunder, unlike any of the others in its ardor. Eviar anticipates it perfectly. The proficient brute swings at the flailing branch with the totality of his stoutness, rebounding it directly towards its creator, who sidesteps it with an impeccable ease. Eviar's greatsword is sent flying from him as a consequence of the clash, his hands throbbing and singed. Ignoring his freshly blackened palms, in that split moment, Eviar, imploring all that he is, folds the gap between him and Yindra in an explosive charge that catches the captain off his guard. Yindra's pupils inflate and dilate with an abrupt trepidation as Eviar launches his colossal fist into his abdomen, the torso of the captain commensurate in size to the brute's clenched hand. The Thunderwolf, blunted by the pressure, expels a copious amount of blood, leaving little doubt that his organs have been grievously damaged. The impact of Eviar's blow delivers Yindra careening and ricocheting across the barren terrain in a chaotic flash. The captain's rival had invested all of his strength into that strike, near completely nullifying Yindra's static retreat. Recollecting his blade, Eviar pivots and sets his stride towards us. Is this the end? Has he been defeated? Have I justifiably surrendered my life? I clench my fists, hardened by an alloy of wrath and incredulity. I must become more formidable. I must grow stronger. It ought to have been me fighting for my own survival, not the captain. Rillandor peers fixedly in the direction where Yindra was catapulted. Out of the deafened noise of the desert, masked by howling winds and rustling sand, I yet hear him. It is faint, a pained voice, a suffering whisper, but I hear it.
Thumb.
The enormous storm cloud rumbles louder than ever before, galvanized by a ravenous vengeance for her master, her winds gusting in an increasing fury. The floating and swirling activity is so great that the hairs on my body salute in a rigid attention to its horripilating cry. With my track command engaged, I can see that all of the surrounding air is charged as well. The captain is putting to use every spark of electricity within, at a minimum, a 3-kilometer radius. Will he be able to concentrate that much energy into an accurate strike? We could all very well be incinerated. Rillandor's pupils widen behind the deep, bleak darkness of his bandages. He does not seem so sure of the outcome anymore. No, I am wrong. There still remains a breath of certainty in him. He is simply curious as to the longevity and tenacity which Yindra exudes. The galvanicity-imbued firmament has even zapped Saba back into our reality, disrupting whatsoever internal scene had captivated him thus. Eviar turns back, facing his downed rival. Upon the completion of his rotation, an arrow molded in the depths of the thundercloud and in a size forged to strike a god comes crashing down upon him, inundating the mighty Tamasu with a grand and blushing flare. First came the flash, then came the boom, both the light and sound, in an enormity that our world is unversed in. We turn our backs and shut our eyes, shielding them further with our arms. Regardless, the light breaches our measly elbows and lids. When the intensity ceases, I turn back to witness the results of Yindra's mightiest strike. A rift, much too deep for the naked eye to fathom, was inflicted upon Oma's barren sands. They slip in as grainy waterfalls. Yindra was able to confine the blast as to not harm us, but the extremity of the attack is yet widespread. I can sense Eviar at the very bottom of the pit. I can feel that the pressure of his presence has loosened its grip. He's gravely wounded. The captain's is fading as well. They are both collapsed, but Yindra struck last. So does that make him the victor? I face Rillandor for his verdict.
You're assuming the Amano won, correct?
He reads me in an instant. I mean no disrespect, but do you view it differently? I nervously ask him.
Indulge in your senses a bit longer, Wolf.
A second dive into Eviar's current state of well-being demonstrates to me why it is that Rillandor behaves so confidently. I can hear that the living Titan's pace of breath is calming with each interval. Yet, His blood rushes like a maddened river that has been liberated from the confinement of a long-standing dam, now bursting into the arid lands of his anatomy and revitalizing them.
His birthright was immortality. As long as he could see it out to live long enough to be truly unkillable, that is.
Rilindor reveals to me what I had grown to expect as the battle dragged on. Eviar's inflictions are healing before us, his organs and flesh wounds soldering themselves together gradually. It would be a far cry to assume that he would be able to continue battle, but at the very least he shall not perish and may yet come to be the last warrior standing. I watch in utter disbelief as he ascends from the pit in his flesh-torn climb. It has been a handful of minutes since Yindra's last attack struck him, and already Eviar moves as though he was not latching himself onto life in hopes that it would not abandon him mere moments ago. His wounds are yet fresh and apparent, fluids erupting and foaming from their gashes, but he is likely to make a full recovery within the week. Amazing.
My friend! My pleasure in the form and flesh of my nemesis! My amnesia of pain itself has been cured!
Eviar touts his win with a wide-reaching victory cry.
He is giving praise for the blessings of such a formidable battle. We shall spare your former captain, as he once spared Eviar.
My being, as a whole, ignites with joy. I would have never considered this outcome. I kneel before Rilindor. Saba follows in suit, not for the sake of Yindra, but he does not care. Rather, he does so to avoid displeasing his Salvadaya. Great Salvadaya of the Tamas, how can I respond with the appropriate gratitude for this philanthropy that you show us, when we are so undeserving of it, when we so clearly lost our wager? I grovel before him. He now has the upper hand. We lost. He has even pardoned Yindra from death. It would be shameful for me to go against my word now. Regardless, were I to consider another way, it would be impossible to face him alone, for in his mind, Saba has already let himself be defeated.
Abide by your word. Please my ears.
Rilindor turns toward me, coughing in the process. The strain of keeping captive his radiation is wearing on him. Eviar enters through the windowed enclosure with Yindra in his arms. He lays him before Saba and I, the captain yet barely conscious. Drink this. It is from Silver Creek. I tilt the canteen that Saba had given me towards Yindra's lips so that he moves no more than he needs to. I am glad that I saved this. Redirecting my attention to Rilindor, I apologize for my delay and begin my explanation. I notice that Yindra is fighting the urge to sleep, induced by the water I gave him. He wishes to know as well. Tiamatu is real, and so was Parias. If you're not accustomed to those names, it is because the events of their lives came before the first Tamas. Rilindor raises his palm, signaling for my silence. He takes a deep and stammered breath before speaking.
Do not mistake us for brutes. The Tamas and Omani share this world, albeit unwillingly, as young siblings share their toys. We know much of our older brothers and their histories. Even our languages differ more as dialects of the same, rather than separate tongues entirely. Were the heavens not thus aligned, we would not have come to an understanding otherwise. So please, spare me this lesson of the ancients and tell me what they have to do with you.
He points at me, his finger trembling from his born strain. Absolutely riveting. Perhaps this Salvadaya knows more than even I do. I am Parias incarnate, and Tiamatu's seal shall soon be fractured. There is no one else who can reactivate the seal. I have Parias's map and his fan, which is the secret to the form that you are so intrigued by. The map links me with the Drakin, a race of guardians who watch over us all. The fan, with the long-gone inventor of mechanics. The key is all that remains. Saba was initially unaware that I was Parias' incarnate, or even the fact that my ancestor's soul, inexplicably, is required to reseal Tiamatu in the first place. Hence Saba's earlier betrayal against me. Somehow, he came to realize this whilst I was fighting with Z in the great arena. Saba also shares an aspiration of mine now. We wish to stitch and smooth the gap between our kinds. Saving Oma together would declare our unity, or at the very least, bring awareness to its tangibility. I tell all as though I was confiding in a savior, excluding only what is not necessary, along with minute details that do not hold much weight.
I am not the warlord chieftain like Eviar here, nor am I our monarch or one to abuse my command outside of my clan. Thus, it is rare that I issue a continental order. But rest assured that what I speak is absolute among my kind, and as such, I will decree on your behalf, Omani, that no Tamas will be on the offensive against you. Furthermore, the escorts I promised will be with you for what remains of your journey.
Does he have such authority? I wonder at first, but I am certain he does not make jest. I am drawn back by his pleasant nature. He is powerful, yet he rules from a platform of understanding, compassion even. It nearly feels as though he is looking down on me, not as a king does a villager, but more as an angel, or some sort of deity does a lost soul. He could serve as a diligent and dutiful guardian of Oma had he incarnated as a Drakin. Perhaps he has already experienced such a lifetime. Thank you, Salvadaya. The order to keep your kind from disrupting my quest is immeasurably appreciated. Alas, I must humbly deny your escorts. I murdered their clansmen, and cannot face nor trust them to aid us in our journey, no matter who orders them to do thus. Please, allow Saba to continue accompanying me instead. Rilindor studies Saba for a brief moment, then looks to me once more.
In exclusion for the duration of this fateful undertaking, Saba is to be banished from our territories from that day forth, lest he is chaperoned by you whensoever in our lands. However, his banishment shall be lifted if the two of you are to be successful in your quest. Now, I must take my leave.
He coughs again, this time revealing a nosebleed, leaking from behind the dusted bandages. He's been holding his power at bay for our sake for so long that it has forcibly exacted its price from him. Why he had chosen to suffer on our behalf from the beginning baffles me, but I shall not question his sympathy. Saba and I kneel once more as they depart. Yindra motions for me to come near to him.
Locate my former master. If my battle with Eviar surprised you in the slightest, then you are not equipped to complete this quest nor face Tiamat aught the need arise. I can sense that you've grown tremendously, but it isn't enough. Go to the Kath forest before you continue. I urge you. When I awake, I will travel back to our capital and warn the council, and subsequently will ask for a meeting with the king himself. There will be skeptics among them, but I will do my best to ensure that they believe me.
Yindra slips into a vital slumber. His is nearly depleted. With such a dwindled life force yet remaining in him, he chose to deliver his guidance. Can a single moment be spared to train? There is no guarantee that I will be required to face Tiamat at all. Ultimately, the goal is to refresh the seal. Thus, it would make more sense to continue as we are, for the hour of his springing forth is unknown. Nevertheless, if Yindra is right in his presumption, then I will be found unprepared in the scenario that he is loosed into our world. I lay the artifacts on the ground before me. The map, speaking to me in its cryptic tongue, emits a glowing trail penning our revealed path to the scorch zone. Its will is potent, but in this instance I will entrust my destiny to Yindra and his unfailing wisdom. I am in your debt, my captain. You could have hunted me down with the aid of a merit-hungry pack, full-hearted in my capture. Yet you came alone to evaluate my misdoings, believing I had every reason to commit the actions that I did. You conceded to me the good of the doubt. For this, for investigating those shadowed rumors with your own eyes, I give you my utmost thanks.